This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, as well as being the vice chair of the state Republican Party. With us is our good friend and special guest, Eric Levine, noted political commentator, essayist, and attorney. Gentlemen, I want to talk to you about the border crisis. There's a hearing today where the Secretary of Homeland Security is saying everything is just swell. They have it under control. Things are working out just fine. They just lost the decision. The Biden administration just lost a decision in the U.S. District Court, which allowed them to triage who is coming in and how many from what countries. My view on the border crisis is as follows. This is a lose-lose-lose for the United States of America. This is a lose-lose-lose for the American people. This is a lose-lose-lose for the future of America. Let me tell you why. If you don't have secure borders, you don't have national sovereignty. You don't control your borders. You can't protect yourself against terrorists, narcotics dealers, child traffickers, people with criminal records, people let out of insane asylums. You cannot protect against that. You cannot protect against the moving into the United States territory and distribution of narcotic drugs, including that mass killer fentanyl. So that's a very, very big deal. So you have to have national sovereignty to have a real country, and you have to have national security. Next, why is it bad for the American people? Because all those bad things happen to the good citizens of this country who are minding their own business, trying to lead their lives. And every town and every county, not just Texas or California, becomes a border county or town. It's moving into the heartland. That's a major threat to quality of life and the safety and the public health of our people. And by the way, the public health issue is these people coming in, you don't know what vaccinations they've had or doesn't have, what diseases they're carrying. There's a possibility that diseases that had died hundreds of years ago will be reestablished because they're coming from third world countries. This is serious business. As to the future of America, how do you govern a country when you don't know who's here? And so they have no process in place, gentlemen, where you know who's coming in, monitoring them, making them go through a legal procedural process so that you have an understanding of who this new demographic is and what their contributions may be or what their threats may be. So, Jesse, what do you say about that?
I think that it's unbelievable, and that the Homeland Security Secretary has not yet even been impeached. And I know we're going to be talking about other issues later on, but this is someone who's been negligent. He's been lying to Congress. He's been lying to the American people, and his policies have put us at great stake. As you pointed out, Your Honor, this is a national security, humanitarian,
of course.
Humanitarian and legal crisis. We're talking about taking action to stop human trafficking, possible terrorists, gangs, drug dealers, the cartel, and the killer of our communities, the influx of fentanyl, and of course, those like, legal, trafficking, minors and such. This is a no-brainer. I think that it's wrong for the United States government that's already lost its cases to bring actions against Texas and its Lone Star, Operation Lone Star, where they're placing buoys and they're using the National Guard to deter immigrants from coming forward. Basically, the state of Texas, through Operation Lone Star, is doing its best on its borders to protect the United States on a number of different levels. How the federal government cannot partner, but yet actually be an adversary to this action is beyond me. And it just demonstrates how out of touch the Biden administration is, not only with its border states, but with every citizen here in the United States. As you pointed out, the lack of a border provides no national sovereignty, no national security, and makes every neighborhood block a border town. Because the number one, tool that's killing our kids and hurting our families, fentanyl, which has ties to China, another great friend of the United States, is invading and killing kids here in this country, in every block in this country.
So you talked about China and the fentanyl coming into the country. Keep in mind that last year, 108,000 people died from fentanyl overdoses. Mm-hmm. 54,000 Americans died in fighting Vietnam the entire time we were there. So every year we have 2 times the number of deaths who died in Vietnam from the fentanyl that comes across the border. So, but what strikes me as most ironic is who wants the open borders most? It's the radical progressive left. These are the same people that claim America is systemically racist, that it's just built on the back of slavery and white privilege. Wouldn't you think they'd be standing at the border holding up signs? Whatever you do, don't come here. It's a horrible place. But instead, they make sure that there are no borders so that everybody can come. Why? Because they want to destroy this. They want to destroy the systemically racist, white, privileged United States.
Don't forget the capitalism. They want to destroy the capitalist system as well. They're a bunch of Marxists. But from their perspective, how do they do that? So you have all these people coming in across the border illegally. They, in their minds, believe that eventually we will have to give them all citizenship. And then they all get to vote. And if we can't get them citizenship, let's pass legislation that enables them to vote anyway. We saw this in New York City. Fortunately, it was struck down by the Court of Appeals. But you're seeing this in townships around the country, the movement to try to get voting rights for people who are here illegally. Because Democrats and progressives believe that they will vote for them. And it'll turn into this dystopian, democratic, progressive wonderland that they envision. So that's really what's going on here. They're prepared to undermine the rule of law. They don't really care at all about American national security. It's all about ideological purity and basically destroying the United States because if no border, no country. Well, Jesse, Eric and I had the privilege and pleasure of having lunch with the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Mayeris, who, like you, is a Cuban American. And 2 interesting points I want to make, and then I want to get your views. The first point he made, he said, they're assuming that this population is coming in from Latin America or Central America or South America of a Hispanic background, that they're automatically going to be Democratic voters. And he's saying, as he assesses what's happening in the body politic, more and more of this community is actually voting Republican. And it's not a majority.
Those who are here legally are doing that.
Right. So that's a very interesting take. The second thing I want to point out to you, Jesse, in response to a question I asked the Attorney General, I said, Texas has just been sued by the United States Department of Justice because they put up these buoys. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Governor Abbott and his state police and his local police are trying to protect the sovereignty of the state of Texas. There's been an abandonment by the Biden administration, both at the White House level, which means Biden himself, as well as his Homeland Secretary, who gets up there in Congress and lies about having a secure border. And nobody's protecting the state of Texas from this influx. So when Texas puts up boundaries and tries to blockade these people from coming in, it's not only protecting the interests of the state of Texas, but they're protecting the interests of the entire United States of America. And I'm very troubled by the fact that the Justice Department, instead of giving the troops to the Homeland people and the Border Patrol, are busy hiring 78,000 Internal Revenue.
87,000.
I'm sorry, 87,000. 87,000 IRS agents. Jesse, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, I can just speak a little bit about personal history for a moment. I think, as I shared here, my father defected from Cuba to the United States. And he did that in the early 1960s, and he went through the process of becoming a nationalized citizen. That happened in the early 1970s. And this issue of amnesty and this issue of immigration has been perpetuating through this country in a discourse with politicians for all these years, about 40, 45 years. There are no real solutions that has ever come, maybe except from the Reagan administration in the early 80s. But one of the things my father said is that he was for legal immigration because he went through the process himself. Illegal immigration allowed people to basically go through the back door and cut in front of people who are trying to try and build a new life here legally, the right way. So we already start off by doing illegal immigration and memorializing that by starting off on a wrong foot, saying you can do bad things for a good place to live. Eric's right. If the progressive left should be sitting at the border, holding up signs saying, don't come here, if the way they describe America on everyday social media and the news stations is how they truly feel. But I think what happens here is that there needs to be a discourse as we go forward and as we go forward to finally get this thing going. I know personally of a local engineering firm here from New York that was working on the border wall that was put forward by the Trump administration. It was then abandoned on day one by the Biden administration. It's Texas that has kept these engineers in place and starting to build that wall along their borders, along with these buoys and the razor wire where they can. Right now, it seems like states like Texas are doing the job of the federal government, but they can only do it for that property that they share on the border that adjoins the state of Texas. We have to see that move forward along the entire southern border, and that's where the federal government really should be taking a leadership position, funding border patrols, funding enforcement, moving back to Title 42 that was the Trump administration, and also supporting these states that are doing what needs to do to secure this border and our southern border for the reasons that we spoke above: national security, humanitarian, legal, and et cetera.
Yeah, I think it's important also to realize that Democrats don't want a solution. They want the problem because it allows them to continue to call Republicans bigots and xenophobes and anti-immigrant and white supremacists and whatever other names they can come up with. So they lose out. How do we know this? You go back to the Obama years. From 2009 to 2011, Barack Obama had supermajorities in the Senate, over 60 senators. He could have passed any piece of legislation he wanted. He never even proposed a single piece of immigration.
And he had the House as well.
Yeah, he had a majority in the House, but he had a supermajority in the Senate. And he never even proposed any immigration policy. You refer to the Reagan years. Reagan, the big flaw of the Reagan immigration reform is that it allowed people in before it secured the border. Then it never got the security, but the people came in.
That's true.
But during the George W. Bush years, there is actually immigration reform that would have dealt with that issue. But who screwed it up? Barack Obama used the filibuster to prevent that bill from ever getting passed. This is the same man who says that the filibuster is a vestige of white supremacy. So who knew that Barack Obama was a white supremacist? But I think the greatest tragedy is, and I think there's blame to go around for both Republicans and Democrats in getting this resolved, because on the right you have these hysterics talking about amnesty. DACA, children that were brought here illegally should become citizens, assuming that they, abided by the law, have been good citizens, have jobs. They have known no other country. Children do not have the capacity to commit a crime under our legal system. So it is not amnesty to give someone citizenship who has not broken the law. And I think the overwhelming majority of people agree with that. However, it must be done by an act of Congress, not by an edict or an executive order from the White House. And I think most people also agree that people that are here now currently illegally, you're not going to round up 20 million people. Maybe it's more. Round them up and send them back. So that you got to get them out of the shadows. So you do not give them citizenship. They are not entitled to citizenship. They should pay a penalty. They should pay their back taxes. But they can stay here and work and pay their taxes. But they can't become citizens and vote. And one of the reasons it's probably a good idea is because of Medicare and Social Security are going to run out of money. We need people to fund it. We need more people paying taxes to fund entitlement programs. And I think most of the country agrees that's somewhat fair. But the starting point, I think everyone will say and agree, we must secure the border. Period. End of sentence. That must happen first.
All right, we have to take a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, esteemed essayist, political commentator and attorney Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in a moment for more interesting conversation.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party and Eric Levine, noted attorney, essayist, and political commentator. I want to begin this segment of our show, Jesse. I want to talk about congestion pricing. Funny thing happened about congestion pricing for our listeners. The state of New Jersey, under leadership of Governor Murphy, a Democrat, has sued the federal government, a Democratic administration, on congestion pricing. Soon, the Staten Island borough president will bring a lawsuit, his own lawsuit, against the federal government, again on congestion pricing. You have both Democrats and Republicans putting in legislation and trying to push in the Congress of the United States a stoppage on this congestion pricing. Jesse, what's this congestion pricing deal all about? I mean, do people realize the significance of this?
I believe that they do, because when it's explained to them and it's told to them that they're going to be to drive into the city of New York where they want to either work, primarily work, or to, basically spend money and recreation time, they're going to be paying anywhere from $9 to $23 additional just to enter, for the luxury of entering Manhattan below 60th Street. I mean, this is going to be pulling out of the American taxpayer, the New York taxpayer, primarily from Westchester but mostly from Long Island, from Nassau County, and especially the western towns of Suffolk County, $15 billion over 4 years for the MTA improvements. Now, anybody who's seen the MTA, there's nothing. We've been throwing money at the MTA for decades, and it has not improved. They've just announced another fee hike moving forward on top of this congestion pricing. You know, you gotta wonder if Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams, when you have Republicans and Democrats both coming at you on an ill-fated, ill-advised, ill-conceived plan to milk more money out of suburbs. And that's what this is. It's hurting working people. It's hurting families. It's hurting the businesses that they're in Manhattan that have already suffered through COVID and the restrictions that New York City and this governor have imposed upon them for the last 2.5 years. They're just trying to get out of it. Now they're just going to lay another $15 billion over 4 years on directed to an agency like the MTA that has demonstrated it cannot control costs. Their budget plan is simply taxing more, adding more fees, and getting more dollars to deal with their issues. They can't even control overtime in their operations, and they're asking hardworking New Yorkers that have to go into the city to make a living to pony up another $15 billion. This is wrong. This is where I can see where you're gonna see municipalities like Suffolk County are going to be also joining in on these type of actions, and they should on behalf of their residents.
I agree 100%. I think all the counties should go. I think all the cities and all the counties should go after this. I agree with that. Eric.
Well, New York State leads the country in out-migration, people leaving the state. And it's obvious that we don't want to ever lose that being in first place. We want more and more people.
Haven't beaten California with the exit, right, with the vans leaving New York. Right.
We want more and more people to leave New York. That's really the plan. We want more and more people who pay taxes to leave. More and more people who have businesses here and make jobs here to leave.
The ones who give to the charities, the cultural institutions,
exactly,
the medical centers. You want them gone.
We want to send the state into an absolute death spiral and make sure it is a living hell. That is basically...
That makes it much more fair, comrade, as they said in Dr. Zhivago.
Exactly. It's not it's not about equality, it's about equity. We want everyone to be equally poor. That's what this is in large part about. But there are some great, delicious ironies here. Governor Murphy is one of the climate warriors, one of the guys who thinks that the planet's going to end probably 2 weeks from Thursday if we don't get climate change under control absolutely immediately. But apparently the threat is not great enough that it should imperil New Jersey commuters. It's okay to... You can do anything you want to save the planet.
Take my gas stove away. Take my lawnmower away. Take my refrigerator
Take your
away.
Car away.
Take my toaster so I can't toast my bagel away. That's all fine.
Do whatever you have to do. Just don't affect my voters. It just really makes it laughable, this idea that the existential threat that climate change poses, because supposedly congestion pricing is in large part motivated, the two main reasons, motivated to save the world and to improve the MTA. And Jesse, to your point about the MTA, how many times have we been told money is going to be raised for specific projects, and then it never ends up that way? Lottery tickets were supposed to save our schools. Spectacular job. Casinos like in Atlantic City and around the country supposed to create all kinds of jobs and pay for schools and other wonderful things. All failures. None of these things ever happened. Remember when Al Gore ran for president, he was going to put all Social Security payments into a lockbox to make sure it wouldn't be borrowed and spent on something else? Because if you open up that lockbox, all that's in there is an IOU. You're going to have the same kind of thing. There'll be a lot of money in there. It won't find its way to the MTA. The improvements won't be made. We'll have to borrow more money. We'll have to raise more taxes. It's really just a way to make sure that New York fails.
Let me make a few points, gentlemen. If the MTA needs more money, maybe they should make sure that the subways are safe, and that's a law enforcement job. And so more people ride the subways because they're confident that it's safe. And maybe you should arrest the fare beaters who don't pay their fares because, I don't know, half the folks don't pay fares. So if I get on the subway or if I get on a bus and I pay, I'm the chump, and the other guy's sneaking in the back of the bus, literally, or jumping the turnstiles, gets away with it.
That would require Alvin Bragg to do his job.
There you go. So that's a problem. Now, so that's one issue. So if you need money, there's a way of getting money without taxing commuters to death. Next, it's totally unfair to commuters because all they're doing is coming in and providing services and doing jobs, helping the city of New York. So you're taxing them for helping the city of New York when we're coming out of COVID, where you need everything to help the city because you only have maybe a 40 or 50% occupancy of the commercial buildings, and retailers, ghost towns and block after block after block in the city. People
will leave and continue to work remotely.
Right.
They won't come in.
Right. Okay. So it's unfair to commuters. It's inflationary because it's another cost. It's another tax, as Jesse's pointed out. Also, by the way, it's anti-environmental. Why? Because what you're going to have is you have all these people avoiding certain places coming into the city below the 60th Street, but they're going to be coming through the Bronx Expressway, And they're going to be coming over the George Washington Bridge, so you can have all that congestion and all that pollution, and then they're going to be stopping short of the 60th Street barrier and double parking, triple parking their parks and running their cars all day. So it's not going to get the money they need because it's going to be misspent. It's anti-environmental. It's bad for the city of New York. It's bad for commuters. And all you're doing is taking care of the pensions, by the way, for people who gild their pensions by boosting the overtime. And Jesse alluded to this. They're boosting the overtime so that the overtime factors into their pension. You want to save money, have different tiers of pension, and don't allow the mainstreaming, the bottom lining of the overtime. That'll save a lot of money too. Jesse,
it'd save the most money is if they had to contribute to 401k plans like everybody in a private.
That's right. Don't do pensions.
Private business, don't do pensions.
Jesse, your thoughts?
To go to your point about fare beating, I mean, in the report that was listed in the New York Post back in May of 2023, they said an MTA report says that fare beating cost the agency $690 million a year. And in fact, the bulk of the MTA's losses on an annual basis is $315 million a year. You're right. You know what? Two things before we go to congestion pricing, before we raise the ticket prices, how about we address two things for the riders and the taxpayers surrounding New York City and the 60th Street. How about we put more cops on the subways so that our commuters feel safe? Number two, how about those cops, while keeping us safe, also we prosecute those fare bearers, so those fare beaters, so that we have an influx of at least a minimum of $315 million a year annually that the MTA can possibly spend frivolously elsewhere. And let's remember, it was just two years ago, in 2022, that there were multiple scandals in the MTA. One of the executives, Reese Mahibir, was fired for doling out jobs to his family. And then there was another report issued in the New York Post identifying how the money pit of the MTA was paying contractors despite them knowing that the work reviews was poor, that the work they were doing was poor. They took no action to remediate that. Those are two things that the organization those are a couple of things that the MTA organization can do to improve before they go into the pockets of commuters, the pockets of taxpayers to get more dollars, whether it's through congestion pricing or a price hike, a fare hike.
You want to hear a radical idea? How about making New York City and New York State more business friendly? So you attract businesses that come here, that brings in more jobs and raises more revenue through more taxpayers.
That's too crazy. That makes sense. Why would you ever do that?
Too much like Florida would never happen.
Exactly.
Right. Why would you do that when that makes sense? In other words, instead of reducing the pie for services and programs, expand the pie. Why not do that? Overtaxation, overregulation leads to one result. Businesses fold or businesses don't start, and they leave. Yeah. And it doesn't work out. And by the way, Mike Lawler, who's the congressman from Rockland County.
And Westchester. He's my congressman.
Right. And a good man.
Shout out to Mike.
Yeah, and he and Gottheimer being a Democrat from New Jersey, and Lawler being a Republican from upstate, they have the right idea. They should have federal legislation stopping New York, and this is New York driven. Okay, this is not New Jersey driven, even though there's stuff going on between New York and New Jersey in terms of transit. This is all New York driven, and this is all driven by the radical left progressives who think there's no such thing as a tax or a regulation or a control of quality of life that isn't a great idea, no matter what the impact is in real life. It's a horrible situation. We on Cats in Cosby at Night, we say this all the time. This is the best way to put a nail in the coffin of New York City and New York State is by doing this congestion pricing. It's unworkable. It has not worked anywhere else in the world. It's an idea which must be stopped if we're going to save the city and save the state.
It's an idea whose time has never come.
I would be doing an injustice if I did not just specifically say that the out-migration and that plan is solely in the hands and created and executed by the Democrats in this state.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, the Democrats run the state. The Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Exactly.
The Republicans are bystanders.
Well said, Jesse and Eric, because that's the problem. I mean, my eyes bleed and my head explodes. Every time people say, oh, you're not really a Democrat. Yes, I am a Democrat, but I try to be a common sense Democrat. You need to have a two-party system with checks and balances so that the minority faction in the Democratic Party, which controls the agenda of the Democratic Party because the others are scared to death of confronting them because of primary fights, you want to have a two-party system to put a check and a control of these radical loonies who are destroying this city and this state. I mean, do we really want to be California again? I mean, how ridiculous is that? Let's save New York. Let's stop these ridiculous ideas. Let's get back to basics. Public safety, jobs, services, high quality of life. That's what we need to do. We're going to take a break now. This is Left the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, esteemed attorney, commentator, political essayist, Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be right back for more interesting conversation.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/US/leading edge.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, attorney, essayist, and political commentator Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I want to begin this third segment of our show today to you about the presidential election that's coming up in 4. So let me set the stage. You have the two leading candidates of the two major parties. One, Donald Trump and the Republican Party, way ahead of everybody else in the pack in the Republican Party. The other people do not seem to get any traction. And as of recent days, DeSantis is losing momentum. He's losing in the poll. He's losing staff. He hasn't regained his footing. He has a problem. And there's no other alternative being posited by the Republicans against him, other than perhaps Senator Scott of South Carolina, who seems to be moving up a little bit, but he's not there yet. But so far, I think it's safe to say if the primaries and the conventions were held now, Trump would be your Republican nominee. Switching to the Democratic Party, my party, at least with the Republicans, gentlemen, and you see with the Republicans, you have good backbenchers. You have a lot of talent out there who are putting their faces up, taking the courage to try to do something, and they're the future of the Republican Party. Whether it's Scott, whether it's Haley, whether it's the governor of North Dakota, who's a very impressive guy. Burgum, very good man. I've met him. I like him enormously. Very common sense, decent guy. You have a lot of good people in the Republican Party. You have nothing in the Democratic Party that stands up. The idea of Biden running again, where he doesn't have either the physical capacity, the mental capacity, the moral capacity, the character and the strength to protect and defend this country, he should not be running for president of the United States. He should, if he was a man of decency and integrity and honor, he would announce, like Lyndon Johnson did, that he's not going to stand for election and open up the process in the Democratic Party. And what's shameful is that the Democratic Party is just looking the other way, aided and abetted by the media, say, oh, everything's fine. Biden is just swell. When he announces that he's come up with a cure for cancer, everybody says, oh, yeah, fine, that's fine, Joe. You've come up with a cure for cancer. He's a fabulous. He makes this stuff up on the go. I don't know if he remembers what he says. The man's not qualified. He's picked a vice presidential person, Kamala Harris of California. Now, her resume on paper is very impressive. She was a DA of San Francisco. She's Attorney General of the State of California. She's a United States Senator. Very impressive. In real life, All she is on paper. There's no there. She's a lightweight. She's totally incapable of being president of the United States. She's totally incapable of being vice president.
She is the poster child for affirmative action. That's who she is. She is where she is because she's a woman of color.
Right. So that's the problem. So there's a group called No Labels. And the question becomes, will they run a third-party candidate? And there's been an attack by the Democrats because they see No Labels as a threat to the Democratic candidacies. You can make an argument it's also a threat against the Republican candidacy. The polls seem to say that there's a big amount of support for No Labels running a third-party candidacy. And they're talking about Manchin as the candidate, Senator Manchin, West Virginia, which is not a bad political move for Manchin. Why? Because he's going to lose his re-election campaign in West Virginia because he's running against Governor Jim Justice, a very wealthy man who's a very, 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 very popular governor of West Virginia. So Manchin's going to lose West Virginia if he runs for re-election, but he could make a real difference in the future of this country. So, Jesse, you being the chief political analyst on this show, will you please tell me what you think about No Labels and a third-party run?
Well, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, because right now it seems that it's more of internal Democrats that are having some buyer's remorse with Biden that are fueling this speculation. We've seen only one third-party effort really be successful, and that was Ross Perot, who, his candidacy cost the incumbent president coming off the Kuwaiti war and a popularity of 90%, but a bad economy, cost him his reelection in Bush 41. It'll be interesting to see how this moves forward. I don't know if this group has the horsepower, financial or otherwise, to get on the ballot in all 50 states to be a factor. I think it's too early to see right now. But we've seen this type of discontent, and in both political parties, we have the Never Trumpers who lay credit for the success of pulling down President Trump in 2020. I wonder if they have buyer's remorse that the person they supported is now actually, careened our country into the left ditch of almost socialism. So it'll be interesting to watch. But I think first ones out of the box, you'll have to see that a candidate like a Manchin, who's a centrist, who actually, is someone that has been elected governor of a red state and has served and won easily with Trump in the White House. I believe it was in 2018, will be the candidate that has some gravitas. We've seen him be successful in blocking blocking for America and stopping some ill-fated and ill-conceived legislation from the White House and the Democrats when they controlled all three levels of government, or both chambers and the White House. Though he kind of lost his way on infrastructure, the way that was structured, the way that was set up.
The Inflation Reduction Act, where he went wrong was the Inflation Reduction Act. He got rolled by Biden and by Chuck Schumer.
And of course,
he was rolled a few times, but that was the most glaring.
Court. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. So right now, I'm really taking a wait and see attitude. I think that this hurts the Democrat. It hurts the incumbent, the party with the incumbent in the White House, more than anything else. We've seen that, like I said, with Ross Perot. But it'll be interesting to see if they can get their logistical act together and be successful to be on all 50 states, because that's what's going to be critical in doing this.
Right. I mean, just to take a couple quick points. First, clearly Joe Biden is not qualified to be president, but neither is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a grievance-driven cultist and would destroy the Republican Party if he's the nominee, would most likely lose. Republicans will lose the House, and we desperately would need for the Republicans to hold on to the Senate to prevent the country from ending as we know it. The most famous and most important third-party candidate was Teddy Roosevelt, who ran as the Bull Moose.
That's true.
He elected Wilson,
right.
and upset Taft. And Wilson was the first of the progressives. And Wilson was a horrendous president. Before Jimmy Carter, Wilson was held out there as being the worst president of all time. So, and if Teddy Roosevelt, who was actually a very popular and successful president, couldn't win in the third party run, it seems highly unlikely that a no-labels candidate would run. But what's the theory?
Run or win?
That they would win. Okay. But when would they run? The theory is they would only run, as I understand it, if Trump and Biden is the choice. If there's anyone else, they will not run. And it's likely that it would be Joe Manchin. And then the question becomes, what's their path? And I just don't see it. Ross Perot, as successful as he may have been, did not win a single state. He didn't get a single electoral vote. So someone will still, as between Trump and Biden, if that's the choice, will get 270 electoral votes and become president. Now let's say for a minute they win a state. I suppose it's possible, but the odds are against them. But if they win a state, then it's very possible that nobody gets 270 electoral votes.
And then what happens?
Then it goes to the House of Representatives.
And who gets to vote in that election?
Only states. It's not each congressman or each district. Every state gets a vote, so there are 50 votes. And depending upon what the makeup is of the new Congress, that will determine who the new president is. Now, if it were held today, if that were to be the makeup, then the Republican would win because Republicans hold most states. I think it's like 28 right now. But if Donald Trump is at the top of the ticket, it may well be that the Republicans will lose various House seats and will lose various states, and that will help Joe Biden. So it's really impossible to know how this plays out. The best thing that can happen for this country is Joe Biden retires and Donald Trump goes away, and we have a real campaign between two credible candidates.
Well, let's take a break at this point. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, esteemed essayist, political commentator, and attorney Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in just a few moments for the final segment of this week's Let the Record Show.
It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, Chairman of the Suffolk County Republican Party, Vice Chair of the State Republican Party, Eric Levine, noted commentator, political essayist, and attorney. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. And let's end this show with what I consider one of the most important judicial hearings we've had in a very, very long time. There was a sweetheart deal made by the Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, with Hunter Biden to let him plead to 2 misdemeanor counts for failure to pay all the taxes he owed, and to get off the hook on false filing with respect to a gun registration, which is a felony. If he would do a diversion program, he'd never have to plead guilty to the felony. It went before the U.S. District Court judge, and she said as follows: no, I'm not going to sign off on this deal. In essence, I'm not going to be a rubber stamp. This is an overreaching document. The document would give a blanket immunity for all the crimes that Hunter Biden committed. It's reprehensible that both the Justice Department is supposed to represent the public interest and defense would do this. I understand why a defense counsel would try to do this, but the Justice Department doing this, it smells to high heaven. And the reason this becomes important, this is an attempt both legally and politically to shut down the exposure of the influence peddling schemes that are alleged against the Biden family, including a gentleman who was the Vice President of the United States and is now President of the United States, Joe Biden. They were trying to get rid of this and move it along. Thanks to having checks and balances and separation of powers and a House controlled by Republicans, a lot of good information came out of the Ways and Means Committee of the House, the Judiciary Committee of the House, and the Oversight Committee of the House. They are going forward and exposing information that was totally suppressed, repressed, scoffed at, laughed at, belittled, and marginalized by the media and by the Democratic Party. Nobody was paying attention to the scandal until people like the New York Post, Fox News, and WABC Radio here in New York were really paying attention to this, and National Review as well. So they go into court. She says, no, it's an overbroad deal. I'm not giving you a sign-off on blanket immunity. As you gentlemen know, federal judges do not have a right to negotiate a plea bargain deal. They just have to look it over and decide whether they'll sign off on it or not. And she refused to do it. It's now been adjourned, and the Biden team is scrambling. Eric, what's your take on this?
So it's interesting to me. You said that you wouldn't approve the deal, but it's if you listen to what the U.S. attorney was saying, there was no deal. They didn't have a meeting of the minds. When the judge started asking about pending investigations, the U.S. attorney admitted that there were pending investigations. Some of them may related to federal lobbying statutes. Some of them may relate to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Some of them may relate to the Espionage Act. And she asked the U.S. attorney whether or not he felt that the immunity in this agreement would cover the pending investigations. And he said no. And the defense attorney said, of course it does. It strikes me as beyond peculiar that such a critical point had not been agreed upon before they walked into court that day. So I think there's a real possibility that the original deal that the U.S. government agreed to was that the immunity would apply, that Hunter Biden would walk free on even the pending investigations. But given what's coming out in the House in some of these investigations, and that what we've been learning in the wake of some of what the whistleblowers have been saying and some of the Comer investigations, it made it politically untenable for them to be able to say, yes, the immunity also covers pending investigations. So I think someone is being less than candid here, but I find it impossible to believe that that the defense attorney and the prosecutors can have such diametrically opposed understandings of what the immunity covered. Because as an attorney who has negotiated these kinds of deals, you make sure you know precisely what everyone's agreeing to.
Good points. Jesse, your turn.
I think that what's interesting is that this is a stunning development, and especially in light of the fact that on Monday, one of Hunter Biden's closest business partners, Devon Archer, is going to be testifying in front of Congress, and he's going to state on the record that Hunter Biden often put his then Vice President father on speakerphone while in meetings. I think that last time
24 times. 24
times. You know, and that now could be likely a violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And the FARA carries some stiff penalties. My question, so this takes a bigger turn here. I do think that because of what was coming out in the congressional investigations, that the U.S. attorney there was getting a little bit more cold feet and maybe had to back away from here. But I ask you two gentlemen, you judge these plea deals came before you. Eric, you said you worked on these things. How does this unfold in front of the judge? How does this not get, adjourned so that this mockery does not move forward? From my point of view as a Republican chairman, I'm glad it did, because it exposes the hypocrisy. It exposes what a sweetheart deal this actually was and is to the American public.
Well, the question, remember, the judge, the U.S. District Court judge, can only say, yes, I'll go along with it and so order it, or send them back to the negotiating table saying, I'm not going to accept this.
Yeah, but the judge, from her perspective, she needs to understand what the deal is. So she just asks some general rudimentary questions to make sure there's an agreement between the parties as to what it is they've negotiated. And the fundamental question of the breadth of the immunity is a pretty standard question you would ask, particularly in response to when you get an answer from the prosecutor that they're still investigating. It's beyond me how they could have thought that for a minute a judge could have approved this.
Well, it raises another question. Can a judge say, well, wait a minute, what about all these other allegations? Why did you handle it this way? Why did you let the statute of limitations expire? How did that come to pass? How come you just limited yourself to misdemeanors when the own guidelines of the United States Department of Justice makes what Hunter Biden did felonies and also calls for jail time. Why did you forget a whole bunch of other possible crimes? Me, if I was sitting on that bench, I'd ask those questions. You know what? I don't want to be, as a former judge, when I sat in Supreme Court in New York, I don't want to be part of a fraud upon the court. I don't want to be part of a sham proceeding. I would ask those questions. Let somebody say you had no right to ask those questions. You don't want to answer them. Say you're not going to answer them, but asking the question themselves are very helpful to focusing the public attention on what really is a sweetheart corrupt deal. Jesse.
I think that Hunter Biden needs a new lawyer. As Eric said, and you pointed out, that the issue of immunity is one of those standard things you want to make sure. If I'm the client, I want to make sure I'm clear of this plea of any future charges.
There's nothing more important that a defendant gets than immunity.
Exactly.
Really?
So I wonder if, and I'm just speculating here, either, there's incompetence on the side of the Biden counsel, or the Justice Department is, they know they're on a slippery slope based on what's going on across the street over in the House of Representatives. And they started taking actions of maybe backing away from a sweetheart deal, or the fact that they're being weaponized for other purposes.
Now, if I'm this U.S. attorney in Delaware and I care about my professional reputation, I would be very, very careful about what I'm doing next. On the other hand, if I'm the U.S. District Court judge and I want to protect my reputation, the integrity of the judiciary, I'd be very, very careful there, because these are serious matters. The last thing this country needs is to have these allegations swept under the rug and nobody paying attention to it.
Hey, I want to know when the trial is. Now that there's no plea deal, when's the Hunter Biden trial?
He's put in what they call, in our business, a pro forma not guilty plea. Doesn't really mean anything. I think they're going to go back and try to work out a deal. That's my prediction. And I just hope
that's going to be even worse now. Think about it.
It's going to be very difficult to do. Yes.
You agree with that, Jess? You think it's going to be very difficult to do?
Absolutely. It's going to be worse for them to be able to deal with with the U.S. attorney and the prosecutor.
Yes, more and more information comes out in the Comer investigation. It's going to make it virtually impossible.
And remember, this deal is going to have to be signed off by Washington, which means the Attorney General of the United States, Judge Merrick Garland, and boy, is he in the soup in terms of what he did and didn't do, what he said and what he didn't say, what promises he made and didn't make, and promises that he made and didn't keep. So Weiss has a problem. Garland has a problem. This is a big, big story, and we have not heard the last of it. This has been Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg, signing off for Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, and our special guest, Eric Levine, noted attorney, political commentator, and essayist. Gentlemen, thank you very much for another interesting show. God bless America, and let's protect the American people.
Amen.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor, or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.